Socrates, former president of Equality Matters, former advisor to President Bill Clinton, and currently a writer for The New Yorker, and then Rhode Island Congressman David Cicilline. Gentlemen, it's great to have you here. And Congressman, I want to start with you because I want to play this exchange. Now we have the sound inside the court with Justice Scalia and bringing up reservations. Take a listen.
I'm curious, when did it become unconstitutional to exclude homosexual couples from marriage? 1791, 1868, when the 14th Amendment was adopted?
May I answer this in the form of a rhetorical question? When did it become unconstitutional to prohibit interracial marriages?
Congressman, I want to ask you, when we talk about that, those kind of comments, do you think that the justices are going to use yesterday's questions in the same way to approach DOMA today?
I think, again, as Ken was saying, it's very hard to predict what the court is going to do based on their questions. But I think that question illustrates that it becomes unconstitutional to deny people access to marriage when the court says it's unconstitutional. And probably that same question was in people's minds when the court struck down the ban on interracial marriages. So I think the difference today will be that the federal courts have recognized that states have the right to define marriage. That has always been the case. And what DOMA does, for the first time, it says it injects the federal government into that and to deny people benefits that married people get based on their sexual orientation. So I think today will be a different argument. It will be, again, the decision by states and requiring the federal government to recognize marriage as defined by states.
Okay, and as the congressman brings up here, Richard, it's about Loving versus Virginia in 1967 to overturn the ban against interracial marriage. And as we dig into the fight over DOMA, at the center of this is the 83-year-old Edith Windsor, who was denied benefits from when her partner of 4 decades passed away. They were married in Canada. However, that marriage was not legal here, so she had to pay over $300,000 in taxes. Bill Clinton signed DOMA in 1996, recently reversing that position. Then we have former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton coming out in favor of marriage equality. How much could your former boss's reversal be a factor in today's hearing?
Well, I think it could be a big factor. It's very rare for a former president, especially the president who signed the law, to come before the Supreme Court and say, this was a mistake, I shouldn't have done it, and I believe it's unconstitutional. So I think it could have a big impact today.
So, Congressman, we've been seeing a number of Democrats in the Senate flip on their views on marriage equality this week alone, coming out in support of it. Meantime, longtime supporter Nancy Pelosi, who's going to appear at those DOMA arguments in court, wrote a USA Today op-ed, quote, saying that we can bend the moral arc of history once more toward justice and secure a future of equality for all American families. Why are Democrats who were not previously evolved seem to be racing now, racing out of the gates to support marriage equality?
Well, I think people understand where we're headed, and they want to be on the right side of history. And, you know, I think this is in many ways an example of where the court is behind the public. The public has really moved on, and the majority of Americans now support marriage equality. And I think this is an instance where the court has a responsibility to catch up, that we are going to be a country in which everyone has access to this important institution. And I think everyone wants to be part of this and look back and say, I stood on the right side of history. I stood for equality. I stood for ending discrimination against people based on sexual orientation and affirm the value and importance of marriage in civilized society. And I think it's a good thing. It's being driven by young people who are changing the hearts and minds of their parents.
And, Richard, is it silly to try to read the tea leaves?
I think it is. I think you can never tell what the court is going to do based upon the questions they ask, because so much of it is positioning for each other and testing out certain ideas. I mean, today's case also, I think, is a much easier case for them. There's a federal law. A number of federal appellate courts have struck it down. The case yesterday, Prop 8, was asking the court to think boldly, and I think they may still do that. I hope they do that, but I think that it's, you know, if we get a big ruling on the DOMA case today, whatever they do on Proposition 8, even if it's a procedural ruling, it will be a momentous term in the Supreme Court for gay rights this year.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much. Ken Mehlman, Richard Socrates, Congressman David Cicilline, I really appreciate it.